Welcome to the Ignite Your Inner Drive Unlocking Motivation Through Self-Awareness webinar. I'm going to start by asking you some questions, reflective questions really. Please pop your answers in chat as we go through it, and we'll see how we get on. So the first question is, or the first thing for you to think about is, what is the why in your work for you? So what is one core kind of value or purpose that drives you in your work? So just answers in chat. What's your why for the work that you do? Adding value, thank you. Making a difference, yeah. Progression, inspire, I like that one. Thank you. Okay, thought number 2 then. Again, in chat, what's one common misconception that you've heard about motivation? Eliminates the need for discipline. It's hard or difficult. Okay. Now, the next one I'm going to put up is I'm going to put a word on screen, and I want straight away for you to just top of the head thinking, type into chat the first word that comes to mind. Okay, so here goes. Here's the word. Motivation. Movement. Exercise. Starting, encouraging. Yeah, lovely. Love all those. And our last one. Your motivation style. Just again, just kind of whatever kind of first seems to resonate with you. Which of these 4 would you say is a good descriptor for your motivation style? Innovation, opportunities, collaboration, achievement. Yeah. Lovely. Okay. So what we've done really is just start to kind of set the scene a little bit, getting your brain into the right kind of gear, the right mindset, the right place to start to think about motivation and what we're going to be talking about today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michelle MacArthur Morgan. I'm the founding partner and creator of the Jigsaw Discovery Tool. And I actually started my career in the hospitality sector, originally working in operational roles and then eventually moving through into leadership and senior leadership positions before moving into learning development about some 24 years ago now. And my work's taken me far and wide since moving into L&D, working with organisations throughout the length and breadth of the UK, but also the UAE, Europe and the USA, across both public and private or corporate kind of worlds. Academically, I started out just out of interest doing a degree in psychology whilst I was actually working in the hospitality sector. But then after doing all my CIPD qualifications, etc., I then moved into studying neuroscience, and for the last 16 years, very much been a student of neuroscience and looking really at the science. But what really fascinates me is how we can apply what neuroscience is saying to us and telling us into the world, or the real world, the world of work, the real world. And it's fascinating looking at the things that it's actually things that we would say is conventional wisdom. Actually, science is telling us otherwise, but there's still a lot of things that we would say is conventional wisdom and science is also supporting. So it's a fascinating world. For me, that is. So intrinsic motivation, which is one of the things we're going to be talking about quite a bit today, is linked to increased well-being, both at work and in a personal life. And when employees feel a sense of purpose and autonomy, then they're more likely to experience these positive emotions, which then links into having a healthier work-life balance. And in today's rapidly changing world, adaptability and resilience are essential skills now. Intrinsically motivated employees are more likely to embrace challenges, to learn new skills and to be able to adapt to change more effectively. When employees are intrinsically motivated, they contribute to a positive, supportive kind of company culture, corporate culture, which then fosters collaboration, teamwork, and that shared sense of purpose that is so important. Fostering intrinsic motivation is not just a nice to have anymore. It's actually essential for organisations that want to attract, retain, and engage that top talent to drive innovation and be able to achieve that kind of long-term success. So the key takeaways that we're looking at for today are to provide a deeper understanding of intrinsic and extrinsic motivators and look at some of the science and limitations of that. We're going to explore some of the common barriers and ways of overcoming those, and then also looking at practical strategies for cultivating and a sustainable motivation, and also how we create an environment that supports that sustainable motivation. As usual, will be broken down into 3 chapters. In chapter 1, we're going to explore intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, the underpinning science, the limitations of that. In chapter 2, we're going to be discussing those common barriers and ways of overcoming them. And then in chapter 3, our focus is going to be very much on some of the ways we can cultivate this sustainable motivation through those higher levels of self-awareness and awareness and understanding of the science. Chapter 1 then. So motivation is the kind of the driving force behind our actions. It's I like to call it the fuel for achieving our goals, for achieving whatever it is we're wanting to set out to achieve. Everyone has a reason why they get up and choose to go to work. And so long as people are doing their jobs, the motivation for going to work might seem unimportant to some managers. However, understanding what is driving individual team members can provide really useful insights for managers. Now, there's 2 primary sources, intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. And these motivators directly impact on how team members behave, how they approach tasks, how they reach their goals. So delivering the correct form of motivation can encourage them to work harder, smarter, and approach tasks with a more positive kind of mental attitude. So understanding the fundamental differences between the 2 types of motivation is absolutely crucial for unlocking potential, for fostering that engagement and creating these environments where sustainable motivation is encouraged and supported. So intrinsic motivation, first of all. It's the inherent desire to engage in an activity because it's inherently interesting, enjoyable, challenging, or perhaps it just aligns with our personal values and our sense of purpose. And the reward is the actual activity itself, that feeling of accomplishment or that kind of real sense of enjoyment and fulfillment, that sense of satisfaction that we get sometimes when we kind of master a new skill, let's say. And that is the reward in intrinsic motivation. So just think about somebody taking up a hobby purely for the pleasure that it brings, or learning a new skill because you're a little bit curious and would like to find out more, or volunteering, just getting that strong sense of contribution that you get. The activity is the reward. Extrinsic motivation, on the other hand, originates from external sources. So individuals are driven by extrinsic motivators, external motivators, to engage in activities that obtain something separate from the activity itself. So these external rewards, or sometimes actually can be more like consequences, can include tangible benefits like money, promotion, recognition, or it can be intangible, let's say, consequences such as, or pressures like deadlines, fear of punishment, or just that desire to please other people. So an example of extrinsic motivation, an employee might work really hard to earn a bonus, or somebody might follow the rules and do exactly what is asked of them to avoid discipline. If we do a quick comparison on intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, and I'll just leave you to kind of look at these as they kind of come up on screen. So here we've got our intrinsic and then our extrinsic. I'll just give you a moment to look at those. So as you can see there, the key difference lies in the source of the drive and the nature of the reward. Intrinsic motivation is self-generated and the reward is inherent in the process of it, leading to that deeper sense of fulfillment and sustained kind of engagement motivation. Intrinsic motivation is driven by those external factors and the reward is separate from the activity. Now, in the short term, that can be really effective, an effective way of motivating people, but it doesn't always foster that genuine kind of interest and engagement and long-term commitment. So recognizing and leveraging both types of motivation, having that awareness and understanding of their unique impacts is essential for personal growth, effective leadership, and creating environments where individuals are truly inspired to thrive. So I just want for you to take a moment to think about the things that you do and identify something that you do at home, at work, where you are intrinsically motivated. And then think of something where you are extrinsically motivated. And then I want you to compare how you feel when doing these two tasks and the impact of that type of motivation on you and your performance. And if you just want to kind of in chat, that if you feel, if you're happy to, just share the impact of those different types of motivation on you and your performance. So a task where you are intrinsically motivated, a task where you are extrinsically motivated, and then compare those two kind of feelings and impacts on you, your motivation and your performance. Intrinsic, my garden. Yeah, I like that one. Extrinsic at work. Lovely. Thank you for sharing those. Okay. So, another question, thoughts in chat. What do you think could be some of the limitations and challenges with intrinsic motivation? Time, burnout, fatigue, enjoying the process. So, yeah. I like that, Michelle. Yeah, not always noticed by others. Yeah, loss of interest. Okay. So intrinsic motivation does offer numerous benefits, but relying on it exclusively can present limitations and challenges. And I'll just take you through just 3 or 4 of the kind of the main kind of challenges. The first one is that some tasks might not inherently spark interest or enjoyment in everyone. So in these situations, an initial reliance on extrinsic motivation might be necessary as a first step to actually get that initial kind of engagement. If an individual's initial interest in an activity is low, then external rewards or even the avoidance of, some form of discipline might be required to motivate the individual to actually participate. So extrinsic motivation can be a valuable tool for getting individuals to complete tasks that might otherwise be unappealing to them, of little interest. Now, one of the things that can happen is with this initial kind of external push, Sometimes the development of intrinsic motivation or interest develops in that individual because as they become more familiar with the activity or experience a kind of a sense of achievement or competence in performing it, then it can actually develop intrinsic motivation. Another one is that intrinsic motivation is not universally applicable to individuals or all tasks. People are naturally drawn to different activities based on their individual interests and values, and what one person finds intrinsically motivating, another might not. So factors such as behavioural preferences, personality traits, cultural backgrounds, all significantly influence what an individual will find inherently rewarding. So this inherent variability actually necessitates a very much a personalised approach when attempting to foster intrinsic motivation in team members. And finally, one important thing is that it's important to consider the potential for what they call potential for over-justification. Now, what I mean by that is offering external rewards for an activity that is already intrinsically rewarding, because that can actually lead to a decrease in intrinsic motivation. So if you offer a team member a reward for doing something, for doing a task that they actually find enjoyable, what happens is over a period of time, they start to attribute their motivation for doing that task to the external factor, to that external reward that you have offered them, rather than their own inherent interest and enjoyment. Now, what that does over a period of time is it starts to undermine their own sense of autonomy. And ultimately, it diminishes that intrinsic drive to engage in the activity in the future. So we have to be very careful about rewarding minimal effort. If somebody is already enjoying doing something, then actually offering reward for that, some form of extrinsic motivation for it, actually further reduces the likelihood of that individual finding that activity intrinsically rewarding in the future. So those are three of the kind of key limitations and challenges around that we're not often always aware of, we don't necessarily think about when offering some form of extrinsic motivation or reward. So just looking at some of the neuroscience now then. Essentially, intrinsic motivation is closely tied to dopamine release in the brain. But unlike extrinsic motivation, it involves a more sustained activation of neural pathways, and particularly those that are associated with cognitive engagement, self-awareness, and the satisfaction of basic psychological needs. So if we just look at this in a bit more kind of detail, dopamine, which is the reward transmitter, associated with pleasure, with reward, it's released when we engage in intrinsically motivating activities. It's also released, though, when we're engaged with extrinsic rewards. However, the difference is if the motivation is coming from extrinsic motivation, rewards, that often just leads to kind of short bursts of dopamine. Whereas with intrinsic motivation, it's associated with a much more sustained and profound dopamine release. Again, important for that sustainability of motivation. Because it's that sustained release of dopamine that contributes to those feelings that we get of enjoyment, satisfaction, and engagement. Now, the key areas of the brain, as I'm sure you're all aware, is very, very complex. And it's not as easy as saying, well, this bit of the brain does this. All the brain regions or various brain regions work together. And the ones that are the kind of the key ones when it comes to motivation I've actually put on the slide here. So the first one is our ventral tegmental area, VTA, which is part of the midbrain. And that area is absolutely crucial for the production of dopamine. We've then got our prefrontal cortex. Now, the prefrontal cortex is responsible for our higher order cognitive functions like decision making, planning, and focus. But it's also activated during intrinsically motivated states. So this leads us to think then, suggests that intrinsic motivation is linked to increased cognitive engagement and persistence. Our anterior insular cortex, the AIC, this region is involved in self-awareness and salience detection and emotional processing. So research there suggests that the AIC plays a role in that experience of autonomy, which, as we'll talk about as we go through, is a key component of intrinsic motivation. Research shows us that for intrinsic motivation to be activated, 3 factors must be present. And those 3 factors are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Intrinsic motivation is also associated with patterns of activity across these neural networks, as I've put there on screen. Large-scale neural networks involving many of the different kind of brain regions. So salience detection, so that's identifying what is personally meaningful and relevant. Our attentional control, so that's about sustaining focus and concentration. And our self-referential processing, so connecting the activities, the tasks that we're doing to our own values and identity. So we know from the science that intrinsic motivation is associated with when we see these patterns of activity across these large scale neural networks. So we can actually, through MRI scans and etc., we can actually see when a person is intrinsically motivated with doing a task. So a deeper understanding of the neuroscience of intrinsic motivation can then inform our interventions and strategies to enhance motivation. So to conclude this little section then, neuroscience provides that really compelling evidence, and it's still a fairly new area of research for neuroscience, so I'm sure there's going to be lots more kind of coming out as we go forward. But there's that real compelling evidence that intrinsic motivation is rooted in those specific brain mechanisms and involves that really complex interplay of neurochemicals and processors and neural networks. Applying that into the real world, it highlights that importance then of designing environments, workplaces, and activities, our tasks, our roles that really foster autonomy, competence, and relatedness to help us to tap into this powerful source of motivation. So I'm going to pause for a couple of minutes, and there's 3 little activities just for you to do here. And this time I want you to just think about a past success that you have had at work. And just focus in on what were your primary motivators at that time. So time when you've been successful at work, and what were your primary motivators? You know, was it the challenge of it? Was it because you really believed in the purpose of it? Was it because you had autonomy to do it? What was your primary motivator? And if you're happy to share, please just pop your answers in chat. Challenge and learning something new. Opportunity to share your knowledge, yeah. Problem solving, autonomy. Yeah. Improve current processes, lovely. Okay, Now just a bit more for you to help you think about your own, identifying your own primary motivators. In a moment, I'm going to put some statements on screen. And I just want you, and this is where your pen and paper might come in handy, but you can just do it in your head. I just want you to rate your agreement. To what degree do you agree with these statements? On a scale of 1 to 6, 1 is you don't agree, through to 6 is you 100% agree. Okay, and this might be something that you want to kind of return to later, perhaps when you get the recording to the webinar. You might want to revisit this and spend time, because in honesty we can't give it justice here today. We just don't have the time within the webinar, but just to give you a flavour for it. So you're rating between 1 and 6, a scale of 1 and 6. 1 is you don't agree, to 6 you 100% agree with the statement. Okay, as I say, you might want to return to them at a later stage when you get the recording. Now, I would like you to rank these following factors based on importance to you. Now, again, what I suggest here is, because of the time limitations of the webinar, that you perhaps want to select your top 3. So what would you rank as number 1, 2, and 3 in that list? Okay, and finally, then, in this section, just want to give you another minute or so just to reflect on the answers that you've kind of thought about from those last 3 activities, and what you've discovered about your own kind of motivators. And then I want you to kind of extend that out and think more about all the things that we've discussed about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, and the impact that each type of motivation has on long-term motivation and achievement of goals, etc. And think about, what is your kind of key takeaway from this chapter? And anybody who's happy to share that key takeaway, just pop that in chat for me. That would be lovely. Yeah, intrinsic motivation closely linked to our reward receptors. Thanks, Michelle. Any other thoughts? Okay, so chapter 2 then. The barriers to motivation. So again, some input from yourself. What do you think can get in the way of team members being motivated at work? Favoritism, personal distractions, yeah. Not feeling part of the team. Absolutely. Lack of knowledge. Yeah. Okay. So several obstacles, and you've put a lot of them there into chat already, that can hinder our motivation and prevent us from kind of achieving that full potential. A big barrier can be that fear of failure, which can lead to procrastination and avoiding tasks which we might find a bit more challenging. Perfectionism is another one. Unrealistic expectations, kind of always wanting to, striving for that absolute perfectionism, can actually paralyze action and diminish our satisfaction and enjoyment that we get. The lack of clarity regarding goals, not knowing exactly what needs to be achieved, dampens down our motivation. Feelings of overwhelm and burnout, stress, fatigue, all make it much more difficult to feel motivated. And the last one, procrastination, actually is quite a significant barrier to motivation, because it creates a negative cycle that undermines that ability to initiate and sustain kind of any kind of motivated, goal-directed kind of behavior. So some of the reasons for that are that procrastination often stems from feeling uncomfortable, about a task. It might come from fear of failure, difficulty of it, or lack of enjoyment. But delaying the task doesn't actually eliminate this discomfort. It actually amplifies it. So as the deadline approaches, anxiety and stress increase, making it even more unpleasant and further decreasing our motivation to actually get on with the task and get it started. And every time we procrastinate, we reinforce a pattern of avoidance, and we actually start to undermine our belief in our ability to complete tasks effectively. And again, that knock-on effect is this downward spiral, making us less likely to initiate tasks in the future. So procrastination really can have some very significant consequences on our motivation. But how can we address these barriers? Well, some examples are things like, increased self-awareness, strategies for reframing negative thoughts, development of coping mechanisms, are all things that can foster a more motivated kind of mindset. So many different strategies. Sure, most of these you'll be well aware of, probably use a lot of them yourselves anyway. But first one, setting smart goals. To enhance that motivation by bringing some clarity, some focus, a sense of direction, absolutely has a positive impact on being able to initiate that initial kind of action and then sustain our motivation. Breaking down large tasks into smaller, more manageable steps can make them far less daunting and provide that real sense of progression as we complete each step. Practicing self-compassion. Now, self-compassion is about treating ourselves with kindness and understanding and acceptance, especially during those times when we're perhaps feeling fatigued or stressed, when we are perhaps struggling. And it can really help by practicing self-compassion, showing ourselves a bit of kindness to combat that negative self-talk and emotions that actually erode motivation. A good tool actually for helping you to practice self-motivation is mindfulness. It's not necessarily for everybody, but it is a great tool for helping us to develop self-compassion. Developing a supportive environment. So our environment significantly influences our motivation. So it's vital that a supportive environment, then we do our best to create one around us. So first of all, surround yourself with positive and encouraging people, people that will actually they believe in you and what you're about, people that will encourage you. Don't be afraid to ask for help from colleagues, mentors, family, even friends. Have some form of accountability mechanism. Share your goals with other people who can check in on your progress. Minimize those distractions. Think about your physical workspace. Is it conducive when you're wanting to kind of focus and be productive? It may be that you've got different workspaces when doing different tasks. Think about where you're actually positioning yourself when you want to do this really kind of focus, productive work. And implementing stress reduction techniques. So how do you manage your stress? I'm sure we've all got our favorite kind of techniques and things that we use, whether that's meditation, deep breathing, exercise, time management, prioritization, really important for this. And, the golden nugget is making sure we get that good quality sleep and sufficient good quality sleep. So those are a little bit about some of the barriers and how we can overcome those barriers to motivation. So let's now look at the third chapter. So the key to long-term success isn't just about finding motivation in the moment, but it's about cultivating that sustainable drive that can propel us forward, even when we're faced with challenges and setbacks. So in this section, we're going to explore some of those strategies for building that enduring motivation, moving beyond a temporary boost to create a consistent internal kind of engine that fuels our performance. Those of you who are regular attendees at the webinars will have heard me say this many, many times. Self-awareness underpins both performance and well-being. And by having higher levels of self-awareness and true understanding of ourselves, we can actually better manage our emotions, our relationships, mindset, stress levels, energy, motivation, and actions, all important factors that impact upon our overall performance and well-being. Now, earlier on, we did a few activities to raise awareness of your personal motivators. And we've also spoken about practicing mindfulness, which is another way, another tool to enhance our understanding of self. But other tools for understanding more about your personal drivers are behavioural profiling tools, such as the Jigsaw Discovery tool, which helps participants to really understand more about their behavioural drivers and strengths. It helps them to develop strategies to overcome procrastination, better manage their energy levels, have awareness of tasks that are more likely to be intrinsically, inherently motivating for them, and then develop strategies to help them draw upon their lesser preferred strengths and behaviours to enable them to complete tasks that they don't find quite as interesting or inherently rewarding. So I'm going to in a moment put onto screen some of the key drivers for each of the 4 Jigsaw Discovery behavioural preferences. I just want you to quickly think about which one do you identify with the most. So which one of these do you identify with the most? Just want to pop in chat. Wow, we've lots of yellow today. Yeah, achievement, success, green. Thank you. It's brilliant. So in a workshop situation, there's a series of activities undertaken to support the identification of key drivers. We don't just go straight in like we have done here today. But once you've understood, the participants have understood and got that increased awareness and understanding of the drivers, they can then look at how these drivers play out in the workplace, identify those tasks and situations when they are more likely to procrastinate, and they can actually think about the impact of that procrastination on themselves and on their colleagues and the overall team performance. Situations when they're more likely to experience that inherent motivation as well. And then ways in which they can overcome that procrastination or cultivate even further that inherent motivation. So that's again all about that self-awareness part and how we can utilize self-awareness to help us create that more sustainable motivation. So the self-determination theory we've already actually touched on. I didn't call it this at the time, but you'll recognise it in a moment. The self-determination theory is a prominent theory of human motivation and personality, and it emphasises the importance of those 3 innate psychological needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. So until the SDT theory, as it's called, the self-determination theory, was developed in the late 1970s by Richard Ryan and Edward Deci. It was believed up till that point that the best way of getting human beings to perform tasks, to do their work, was to reinforce their behaviour with rewards. Now, what this theory suggests is that when the innate needs of autonomy, competence, and relatedness are satisfied, then individuals experience optimal motivation. Psychological well-being is present, and overall performance is good. But conversely, when these needs are not met, then we see that diminishing motivation, and ultimately, over a period of time, we'll see a decline in overall well-being and obviously performance. So the intricate kind of interplay between autonomy, competence, and relatedness is therefore essential for unlocking that sustainable intrinsic motivation. So we have to think about creating an environment and adopting practices as well that actively support these needs of autonomy, competence, and relatedness to help us to really foster this internal kind of drive and promote positive outcomes. Now, again, for those of you who are regular attendees or certified practitioners of the Jigsaw Discovery Tool, then you'll be aware of a model called the SCARE model, which is developed by Linda Ray and focuses on the 5 social domains of being human. And included within those 5 social domains are autonomy and relatedness. And the SCARE model is a leadership tool that can be used to support the development of sustainable motivation. Now, if you're not aware of the model, then please, if you want to pop your details in chat, I can send you a link to a short 3 or 4 minute kind of recording which explains the SCARE model and gives you some examples of how you can actually use it. But the 5 domains, as I say, autonomy and relatedness are 2 of those 5 domains. And in the recording, we focus on how we can actually create a positive environment which produces a reward in the autonomy, need for autonomy, the need for relatedness. So other strategies you might want to consider to support cultivating intrinsic motivation in the workplace. Empower employees. Think about how you can actually provide that autonomy. Can you give them autonomy around the tasks that they do, their schedules, decision making, perhaps if you give them appropriate kind of boundaries that they can make or limitations that they can make their decisions within. Delegation of responsibilities. What can you actually delegate to give them that feeling of autonomy and empowerment? Do you invite employee input? Do you consult with them, ask for their ideas? And I don't just mean paying lip service to it. I mean truly engage in collaboration, communication, getting their input. And how do you go about fostering trust? All kind of key important things to help empower employees. Do you provide opportunities for growth? So what mentoring, coaching, skill development do you actually offer? Or more importantly, are your team members aware that you offer? Do team members have a clear career pathway? Do you encourage team members to take on new challenges? Do you promote that development of a growth mindset? You know, is it okay to make mistakes? And do you view mistakes as learning experiences? Fostering purpose and belonging. Now, this is another topic we've spoken about before, and it's actually recognised that 20% of employees in any one day feel they don't belong. You might be aware of the term that's used for this. It's called workplace loneliness. And it really is starting to impact on performance and employee well-being. And it is becoming quite a major challenge for managers. So how do you help your employees to connect their roles and their work to the company mission and values? Do you encourage employees to make the connection between their personal values and their work? All about creating that kind of sense of purpose and belonging. How do you promote teamwork? Do you hold team building activities and events? Even if it's just, you know, your team all once a month, the last Friday in the month, everybody has lunch together. But how do you promote that teamwork, that collaboration? Celebrating team achievements. How do you go about creating a positive and inclusive work environment? Does everyone feel valued? Does everybody feel heard? Do they have a voice? Now, again, if you're interested in the workplace loneliness aspect, then we have got a fact sheet on that. And if you want to just pop it your name, your details in chat, I'm happy to send you a copy of the workplace fact sheet as well, the loneliness fact sheet as well. And aligning values. We need to really know our team members as individual human beings. What is important to them? What are their values? And then we need to be able to respect their values and help them to align their work with their personal values, their interests, their behavioural strengths. And the last one on here, encourage enjoyment. You know, do your team members actually have some fun whilst at work? Know what individual team members actually enjoy about the work and provide them opportunities for them to engage in activities which they actually find enjoyable and satisfying and providing fulfillment. And this all links back in again to understanding and having that awareness of behavioural preferences. So just to recap, we've had a kind of a deep dive into intrinsic and extrinsic motivators, looking at some of the science and the limitations. We've explored some of the common barriers and way of overcoming them, and we've finished by looking at some of the strategies for cultivating that sustainable motivation and creating that environment that supports sustainable motivation. So one last question for you today. What is your key takeaway from today? What are you going to start doing, stop doing, keep doing? If you just want to share in chat, that would be lovely. Yeah, understanding motivators, self-help, self-awareness helps to motivate, absolutely. Start adding more fun, stop procrastinating. I like that, yeah. Yeah, motivation requires effort, but when it works, it's great. Yeah, I like that. Thank you. Okay, so thank you for joining us today.